Listen to this raw vocal.
You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs.
Now listen to this finished vocal.
You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs.
This is the transformation I'm showing you how to get today. I'm going to show you how to get bigger and wider vocals that sit perfectly inside the mix. So let me take all of our processing off here, and I'll A/B our plugins on just our vocals. So I'll solo up our vocal, you can hear the raw vocal, and then I'll click our chain in, you can hear where we end up on just the soloed vocal here.
You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind. It's only love she hopes to find. You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind. It's only love she hopes to find. You know.
You can hear when we click in our chain, we get so much more control tone-wise, frequency-wise, as well as dynamic-wise on this vocal, and we also get so much more depth and dimension out of our vocal. That's what we're looking for here to get our vocals sitting right inside the mix. So I'm going to take off all of our effects here, take off our processing on the bus. We're going to take off all the processing on our individual channel as well. So this is where we're starting on this vocal, just the actual lead vocal channel, and this lead vocal channel is sending into my vocal bus here, which is where I'm doing a little bit more processing, and then I'm sending out to all of the effects. So I want to make sure my vocal chain is completely finished, that I've polished the sound off before I send it out to any effects. That's why the effects are at the end of the chain here. But starting at the very, very top of the chain here, here's the first EQ I have on the vocal. And the first thing I'm always doing on any vocal is getting a high pass filter in to take care of any kind of plosives, anything that's getting nasty in the bottom end here. So I'm going to solo up our vocal, and I'll A/B this high pass filter for you. So 224 hertz, 12 dB per octave. Take a listen to how this cleans up the bottom end on our vocal and focuses the frequency range more on this top end, the mid-range, and above.
You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind. It's only love she hopes to find. You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind.
You can hear without the high pass in, we really get a lot of extra energy in the sub area from B's and P's, any kind of plosives that are putting a lot of energy into the microphone. We really hear all of that down in the sub area. We don't want that coming through inside the mix, so we're using the high pass filter first to clean that up. This makes sure that anything down the line, any kind of boosts, compression, effects, don't hear all of that messy sub area. So cleaning up the bottom end on our vocal first. We'll get to this boost, but the second thing I'm always doing on vocals is compression. I want to get the vocal cleaned up first, and then I want to get it even before I start trying to adjust the frequency response too much, boosting top end, boosting low end. Any of that comes after I get the vocal clean and after I get the vocal even. So the second thing I'm using here is this FET-Style compressor, this 1176 style compressor, to get the vocal even dynamics-wise. So 4:1 ratio, I've got the attack at 0.55 milliseconds, so very, very fast attack. It's medium slow for this unit, but still super, super fast in general. And then a 50 millisecond release, so the fastest release time for this compressor. Just pushing up the input till we're getting about 7 to 10 dB reduction. I know that seems like a lot of compression for a vocal, but we really want to clamp down on this to make sure it sits in one place in the mix. So as we push this up, we can park it in one spot on top of this track so our vocal doesn't dip and we don't lose any lines or lose any lyrics in all of the guitars and keys that are going on in this track. So take a listen here without the compressor, and then I'll kick it in.
You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind. It's only love she hopes to. You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind. You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs.
You can hear how all that compression really holds our vocal in one spot. We're not actually changing the overall volume too much of our vocal. We're clamping down on some of those peaks and we're bringing up some of the valleys here in the vocal. So it's super, super even volume-wise, but it really holds the vocal in one spot. So no matter where we park the fader, we're going to hear every single line of this vocal. And I like using an 1176 style compressor because of the character and parts on the vocal. I feel like pushing 7 to 10 dB of reduction into this compressor helps me exaggerate the character and the personality and the performance of the artist. So it's one of the other reasons I love using this compressor as well. So now we've got our vocal cleaned up. We've cleaned up that bottom end. And now we've got our vocal even. So we're going to come back to this first EQ now. This is where I'm going to boost top end. So once I get the vocal evened out and I can park it in one place inside the track, then I can come back and start really changing the tone. So the only thing I'm missing here on this vocal is some top end. So I've got a huge boost here, 9 dB at 8K to really brighten up this vocal and make sure it cuts through inside the track. So I'll play this to you by itself first, solo it up, and then I'll stick the vocal inside the track and I'll A/B this top end boost. You can hear the difference it makes inside the whole mix.
You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind. It's only love she hopes to find. You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind. It's only love she hopes to find. You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind.
You can hear that one boost there really helps our vocal cut through and compete with everything else that's going on. We've got a lot of big distorted guitars. We've got some high keys going on. Then, of course, our cymbals. All that stuff is taking up space in the top end. So we need to make sure our vocal has the appropriate amount of energy up there so it can compete and cut through everything else that's going on. So moving on after that, after I boost in the top end, I like to come after, at the end of the chain here, after the compressor and control that top end. And the more and more I mix, it seems like the lower this band comes. I started at like 5K and then down to 4K, and I've settled at about 3K here. So it really clamps down on the top end here. So it evens out the top end. We did a huge boost to get some brightness and some cut on our vocal, but now we want to control anything that gets too much. So mainly the sibilance range up on the top end. So we're looking at 3K and above here with the multi-band, and I've got it 20-to-1 ratio, fastest attack and fastest release. So it's going to work like a limiter on the top end. Anytime something gets too loud, it jumps out in the mix. This is going to grab that and pull it down, and then it's going to let go as fast as possible. So it's going to leave the rest of the top end on the vocal untouched. But anytime there's something that's too much, it's going to grab it and pull it down. So take a listen here. Without it, and then I'll kick it in. Pay attention to how it controls the top end here on our vocal.
You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind. It's only love she hopes to find. You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind. It's only love she hopes to find.
So it really keeps our vocal from getting too crispy up there, and it makes sure all of those S's aren't super exaggerated from the boost we did to get the brightness on the top end. So a little bit of control here with our multiband, with our de-esser, to make sure that top end doesn't get out of hand. Now at the end of the chain on the actual vocal channel, I'm adding just a touch of weight in the low mids and the bottom end. So after we balanced out the top end, I felt we were missing a little bit of energy down here around 150, around 200 hertz. So in the low mids and the low end of our vocal. I didn't want it to feel small, and I didn't want it to feel thin when we park it inside the mix. So just a touch of energy down here goes a long way to making sure our vocal feels big in the mix. So we're adding about 2 dB at 142 hertz here. And then I'm adding another dB at almost 300 hertz, 281 hertz here. So adding some low mids and adding some bottom end so this vocal doesn't feel really top end heavy. It feels balanced across the board here. And I'll A/B both of these moves together here for you. Without it, and then with.
You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind. It's only love she hopes to find. You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind.
You can hear those are small moves, 2 dB and then another dB at almost 300, but it goes a long way to add some weight and girth to the bottom end of this vocal, so it feels like it belongs on top of this track, and it's not getting buried by anything else that has more energy in this frequency range. So that's the end of the processing on our actual vocal channel. Now this vocal is sending into my vocal bus. We've got a couple harmonies and an ad-lib going in there as well, but mainly focusing on the lead vocal here. The next thing I'm putting into the chain here is soothe. There's a couple frequencies that are poking out in the like 3.5, 4, 5K area right here, and I really want to clamp down on those and notch those out. So if you don't have something like soothe, you can just pull in an EQ and narrow up the Q or the bandwidth all the way, and you can search and pull out those frequencies. You could also do it with dynamic EQ. This is kind of what this is doing. It's a little bit of dynamic EQ, but it's a little bit more automatic, and it's way faster than me searching for it with an EQ. So pulling in soothe here, I've got the sharpness all the way up. So the same way I would dial the Q or the bandwidth all the way up on an EQ, I've got the sharpness all the way up here, and just dialing up the depth till I'm getting about 12 dB reduction on some of those ringing or peaky frequencies. We're only looking at 2K all the way up to 20K. So again, kind of focusing on the top end here, but really honing in on this pain frequency range around 4K. So take a listen here, and I'll kick this in. You can see what it's doing and hear what it's doing to our vocal.
You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind. It's only love she hopes to find. You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. And on the neon Broadway signs.
You really hear it on the word neon. It kind of rings out without soothe in there, and it gets a little bit harsh and a little bit edgy. If we were to crank that up and listen to this really loud, that would really hurt. That would turn off a listener, and they'd exit out of this track pretty quick. So controlling that and smoothing out our vocal allows us to get more volume out of our vocal, so we can kick it up inside this track. So that's soothe there. Fast attack, fast release as well. Same kind of principle with the multiband. We want to get in, we want to get out as fast as possible, only affecting what we want to get rid of on this vocal. We want to leave the rest of the top end untouched, really smoothing out our vocal there. This limiter was catching a peak here, actually right where the cursor is on the vocal that was jumping out. So if I play this for you, watch when we get to this range, you can see the meter kind of jumps. So this limiter is just an afterthought here to control the vocal even further.
You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind. It's only, you know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind.
Just grabbing that one jump a little bit. It doesn't come off super, super loud, but you can see it's a sharper transient than the rest of the vocal. Just the way he sang that phrase came out sharper and a little bit spiky. So just having the limiter there at the end of the chain to catch anything that jumps through like that. So that's all the processing on our actual vocal channels here. Now we're sending off to our effects. The first thing I'm always kind of bringing up on a vocal is I'm always testing out the slap delay. I always kind of mix these in the order they show up in the chain here. So the slap delay we will look at first here. I'll scroll over to our effects. This is the slap delay I'm using on the vocal here. It's just the analog delay from inside of PreSonus. It's their stock plugin. It's just 100 millisecond slap delay, but I'm making use of the filters in here so it doesn't muddy up or cloudy up our vocals. So low cut 500 hertz, high cut at 3K, just focusing in on the mid range, and then I've got the drive cranked all the way up, the tape saturation here, so it's more of a distorted slapback. Here's what that sounds like by itself.
You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind.
Having it all distorted like that adds some extra energy to the slap, but it also keeps it super, super even. So as I pull it up, this kind of double slapback effect is going to stay parked in one spot, and it's not going to add add dynamics to the vocal that I don't want to add. I've already worked really hard to even the vocal out and park it in one place. I don't want to add dynamics with the slap delay. I can add dynamics with things like the plate reverb or extra delays, but the slap delay, I want that parked in one spot to kind of work to give the vocal some dimension. So let's throw that back in on the vocal, and I'll A-B it inside the track here for you.
You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind. It's only love she hopes to find. You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs.
It's mixed pretty subtle inside the entire mix. It just gives me a little bit of dimension on the vocal, so the vocal doesn't feel like it's sitting really, really flat in one spot. It has this little bit of three-dimensional effect to it. Now, the next thing I'm reaching for is the plate reverb, and this is an impulse response of the Lexicon A plate, the Lexicon 480 A plate. So it's a 2-second plate reverb, and then I've got the pre-delay dialed all the way up to about 152 milliseconds. What this does is it makes sure the reverb isn't sitting right on top of the vocal. So we have our vocal going, and then our reverb is going to be a little bit delayed from our vocal. That way they're not fighting each other, and we're not adding mud, and we're not cloudying up our vocal. If they sit right on top of each other, they're fighting for space inside the mix. With this little bit of delay, it helps us add some extra length and make sure we hear our vocal really clearly, but then get that nice tail and depth from the reverb. So let me throw that in, and I'll A-B it by itself, and then we'll throw it inside the mix here as well.
You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind. It's only love she hopes to find. You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind. It's only love she hopes to find.
And I think I forgot to mention here, I do have an EQ after this reverb return, and it's rolling off everything below 300 and then everything above 10K, just so the super, super highs don't get too crazy on the vocal. Anything that's important on the vocal, I do like to come mainly from the vocal. So the top end, the brightness in the air, I want that coming just from the vocal track, and the bottom end as well. The weight on the vocal, I don't want that coming from the delays or the reverbs or the effects. I want those mainly focusing on the mid-range energy, which is also important on our vocal. Now I'm adding in this stereo quarter note delay. So I'm clicking on the delay, and then the side chain I have coming from the delay as well. All this is I'm using the splitter plugin inside of Studio One to get access to the left channel and the right channel. So the splitter is on channel split, so I get access to the left side and then the right side. I have a delay on the left side that's about 10 milliseconds short of a quarter note. 20% on the feedback. I'm making use of the filters again here. So 300 hertz on the low cut, 3K on the high cut, 100% wet here. But if we flip over to the right side, you can see I'm about 20 milliseconds higher on the time. So I'm 10 milliseconds past a quarter note delay. Same filter going on, 300 and 3K. 20% on the feedback, and then 100% on the wet, of course. So those are our delays. That's what makes it stereo, splitting them off by 10 milliseconds on each side from a quarter note. So they're different on each side. But that can be a relatively crazy sound to try and mix in against your vocal, and it can make things sound pretty messy, pretty fast in the mix. So I'm using this compressor afterwards to make it a dynamic delay. So I'm side chaining from the vocal here. I'm actually sending from the background vocals as well, but side chaining from the lead vocal here. So the compressor is going to be listening for the vocal. So while the vocal's going, it's going to compress the delay down by about 7, maybe 8 dB. And then when the vocal stops, the compressor lets go, and the delay will come to fill the gaps in between the vocal. So take a listen here by itself first, and I'll A-B these, and then I'll put it inside the mix here. It's mixed relatively low, but it adds some nice width to our vocal.
You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind. It's only love. You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind. It's only love she hopes to find. You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs.
So that's our stereo delay. Now the last piece of the puzzle here is what helps me get some extra dimension and some extra width and thickness out of the vocal. It's sounding pretty good here at the moment, but I want to give it that extra oomph so it really sits on top of this track and really feels like the focal point. So I'm sending out to what I'm calling the widen and thicken bus here. And all this is a couple delays and then a couple pitch shifts. So I'm making use of the splitter plugin here inside of Studio One again to get access to the left channel and the right channel. On the left channel, I have a delay that's delaying it by about 5 milliseconds. Again, 100% wet, no filters, none of that stuff going on. And then after that, I have a pitch plugin that's pitching it down by 5 cents. So negative 5 cents on the left side, and then on the right side, I have another delay, but this time it's delayed by 10 milliseconds. And again, there's some feedback here as well. I think I forgot to mention that on the first delay. So the first delay has 8% on the feedback, and then the second delay has 9% on the feedback. No filter or anything like that going on. And then the pitch channel on the right side is up by 5 cents. So -5 on the left side, +5 on the right side. Let me show you what this sounds like just by itself. It sounds pretty wacky by itself. So here's just the wide and thicken bus.
You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind.
It's super, super wide, and it's kind of phasey sounding, but it's thick as well. And that extra width is coming because I've switched the channel into binaural pan mode and then cranked it all the way up to 200%. So if you don't have stuff like this on your channel, you can just throw a width plugin at the end of this chain and then crank it up to 200% on the width. So that's by itself. Let me show you what this sounds like just on our vocal. So here's without it, and then I'll put it in, and then we'll throw all of our effects inside the track.
You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind. It's only love she hopes to find. You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind.
You can hear by itself, it really helps the vocal take up more space instead of being parked and relegated to just the middle of the track. It's the most important part of the track, our vocal, and we want it to shine in the center, but I want to give it some width and some dimension so it does compete with everything else that's going on the sides, and it's not just coming from the reverb or the stereo delay. I want it to be some thickness on the vocal that's going to come up and give it some power all the way throughout the panning spectrum here. So let's throw all of our effects back in here inside the mix, and I'll A/B all of them at the same time.
You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind. You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind. It's only love she hopes to find.
You can hear that's where a lot of the dimension and the width is coming from on our vocal, is the effects that we're stacking to make it feel big, to make it feel wider inside of the track. We get a lot of the bigness and the size on the sound from the processing we're doing on the channel, but then all of that width and dimension, that's coming from our effects here. So one more time, let me A/B all of our plugins here, the effects on the channel, and then our effects sends as well. So here's our finished vocal, and then I'll A/B. You can hear our raw vocal inside the track as well.
You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind. It's only love she hopes. You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs. She don't really mind. It's only love she hopes to find. You know she likes the lights at night on the neon Broadway signs.
Getting vocals that are big and getting vocals that are wide, this is how we're doing it here. Starting with our EQ, getting our vocal cleaned up with our high pass filter, adding some brightness on the top end so it cuts through everything else that's going on, making use of our FET-Style compressor here to really clamp down and contain the dynamics on our vocal so we can park it in one place volume-wise. Our multiband here acting like our de-esser, taking care of the sibilance range and controlling that top end energy so nothing gets too crazy or harsh. Then we've got our EQ adding some weight so our vocal has some bigness and some thickness inside the track. Over on our bus, using Soothe to control any harsh frequencies that slip through the multiband here and just notching them out by about 12 dB. I have a little limiter here catching any peaks volume-wise that jump through on the vocal. And then all of our effects here, the slap delay giving us a little bit of front to back dimension, our plate reverb here giving us a lot of depth and some length on our vocal. Quarter note delay here giving us some movement on the vocal. That's being side chained here as well so it doesn't get too crazy. And then last in the chain here is our wide and thicken bus that's giving us some extra dimension and width and thickness so our vocal feels big and wide inside the track. I hope that was helpful for you if you are looking to go a little bit deeper into the mixing process in its entirety and you really want to start to hone your workflow as an audio engineer, then I have just the tool for you and it is completely free. It is my 7-step mixing checklist and it's just a simple PDF guide that will walk you through the entire mixing process step by step to help you get professional and radio-ready mixes without any more of the guesswork. Completely free for you to download and you can get access to that by clicking the link below in the video description. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you in the next video.